quite what you're expecting. If you're expecting a list of quick tips and tricks to sit down with your children and make sure that their pencils are sharpened and that they've got adequate lighting and they've got a nice desk and they go into a routine to do homework and that you read to them at night and all those sort of things, that's not what it's going to be about, because I assume that you probably know most of that already. There will be a little bit of that at the end, but it's going to be a bit more general. It was introduced as a lecture series, in a way. I know that the PTA put together a series of these sort of talks and discussions throughout the year. So this will just scratch the surface of some of my views about learning, and about homework learning in particular. So there will be more. The title lecture is sort of slightly misleading in that I do want you to have an opportunity to talk as part of this and to share your experiences of homework with your children and a short chance to ask questions. I'll be talking for about 15 or 20 minutes, so you know how long to sit. If you type in homework to Google, in particular to Google Images, as I did the other day, this is the sort of thing you get. Not all negative. These are genuine images, so they just come off Google Images this week when you type in homework. Homework's ubiquitous. It's been around for a long time. It's there in all schools. We all probably did homework when we were at school. One overriding view of homework is that it's a bit of a chore, it's a bit tedious, it's a bit of a battle with parents and children to get them to do homework, and it's a largely solitary activity. Unfortunately, that's all too common a view. The issue is that most people, most parents have a view about homework, like they have a view about schools, because they went to school themselves. Things have changed, things have developed, and I'm going to talk a bit about how we've been developing it here and what sort of things you will see in the months ahead. But this is a key overriding question that we should ask, going right back to the start. Why do we set homework? What is it for? Is it to keep the children occupied? Is it to keep the children occupied in the evenings? Is it to deprive them of sleep? Is it to punish them? Is it to give you a bit of free time? Well, it's not, is it? Well, clearly it's not, because it doesn't actually give you a bit of free time at all. These are the two of the images that I put up before. This view is that homework is something that children try to get out of doing. This is a view that is largely a solitary activity and a burden and does tend to overload children. Homework is a punishment, it's boring, it's a chore, it's tedious, it's overwhelming, it's a solitary activity, and it deprives children of sleep or play, particularly as they go up through the school age and get towards IGCSE and GCSE examinations and then on to the IB diploma. It's certainly not about any of those things. Homework has many purposes and takes many forms. We haven't got it right here at BISB by any means, but this is what we're aspiring to. Homework is a simple tool for memorizing things. Homework to improve skills, homework to deepen understanding, to prepare for the next lesson or for an examination, to somehow magically, just by setting homework, improve children's ability to work independently. But overriding all of those is the development of the capacities to learn better in the future, which is why we set homework in the school here. The sort of resilience to be able to bounce back from a difficulty in homework or any sort of work. What to do when you don't know what to do, which is resourcefulness. And reflecting what worked well when I was sat at home doing my homework, what didn't work so well, how can I put it right in the first place. Homework overall is about learning. It is highly effective, particularly as students go up through the older year groups. And here's a little bit of statistics, and it's not big, and it's going to be one statistic: 5 months. Homework, serving the purposes that I put up on the slide before, can have the equivalent of 5 months extra progress over a child's schooling. And the way that's measured is the schools that set homework effectively. You look at the typical progress that students are making of all sorts of abilities and backgrounds and starting points. Statistically, whiz all that together, and on average, it produces an extra 5 months worth of progress. So it's worth doing, and it's worth doing well if we can. And it's worth having parents supporting our purposes for homework, pushing it forward in the ways that we're pushing it forward in school, and doing it effectively and efficiently and in such ways that it doesn't cause arguments at home. It's all too common. I'm going to talk about two things. Because it is about learning. Put that back. So how can we make it do its job better? And in fact, how can we make it do its job as best we possibly can? And the answer to that is not about sharpening pencils, and it's not about creating a quiet study space, and it's not about setting routines, although those are essential. It's about two things. It's about the affective and the cognitive. The affective being the emotions associated with learning, and the cognitive being about learning itself and how the brain develops and grows and learns and remembers. And I'm going to talk about those two things, because that's how I believe we as parents, and I'm a parent myself and a student here, we as parents can help with homework. If we've got an idea about how the emotions affect learning, particularly at home when sometimes it's a struggle, and how learning takes place. I'll start with the affective being a technical term for the emotions generally. Like most emotions and most emotional reactions, the attitude, the reactions and the responses to any event, homework in particular, can be learned, can be changed, are heavily influenced by parents and become embedded over time. So we can have a big influence, positive or negative, on how homework is seen. And here's a bit of neuroscience. One emotion associated with an unfamiliar situation is stress. And it's normal, it's natural, and it's positive. An unfamiliar situation means learning. If it's not unfamiliar, then it's not learning. In a child's brain, this bit here, that is actually the prefrontal cortex, is developing. It's not fully developed until the early 20s. This is the bit that controls emotions, positive and negative. What's developing far more rapidly and hits a certain peak in the upper primary, lower secondary age groups is this bit, the amygdala, deep inside the brain. It develops so rapidly, it fires off all sorts of uncontrolled and uncontrollable emotions in children. The sort of temper tantrums that you'll see with a 2-year-old come back again with a 14-year-old and stick to about 18. The only reason they stop at 18 is because they usually leave home and you don't see it. And it's still there until the early 20s. It happens more in boys and lasts longer in boys. In girls, This bit here, the prefrontal cortex up here in the brain, grows and develops and learns to manage emotions, and it happens in girls quicker than it does in boys. That's just a fact of evolution. Any of you that are involved in any leadership role or any management role in business or industry and have seen any of Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence will know all this already. Stressful situations, unfamiliar situations, learning, not knowing what to do, will fire off this amygdala, will flood the brain with cortisol and all sorts of stress hormones, deliberately so that it opens up the blood vessels, increases oxygen to the brain so that you can learn, so you can know what to do. But in children, it is out of control. Which makes it extremely difficult. And one of the things that I have found as a parent, when I learned it, that helps a lot when a child comes home after a busy day at school. Perhaps they've been doing an after-school activity or a club, perhaps they've been doing a piano lesson, they're tired, they're hungry, and you say, right, you're going to sit down and do your homework, and you get a negative reaction. The chemicals that flood the brain, triggered by this amygdala lighting up, take around about 20 minutes to leave. There is no point, if your child has a bit of a tantrum about homework, of saying, come on, settle down, be sensible, get on with it, because what you're talking to them about then is get this prefrontal cortex working. It's not going to be working properly till their mid-20s. So you're fighting a losing battle. So wait and calm down. So, interestingly enough, and this is an incidental point, but we'll come back to it a bit later on, the chemicals that flood the brain when you have a positive response to something, those happy chemicals, serotonin and so on, they actually leave the brain about 4 times quicker. And that's the same through adulthood. Stress chemicals take a long time to go, happy chemicals just go pretty quickly. All sorts of people that you can see on YouTube talking about gratitude, creating a gratitude attitude and so on, are actually right. You have actually got to deliberately focus on positive things and positive thinking, because your brain will lose that positivity much quicker than the negativity. It's a bit of work you've got to do. So, what does this mean for parents? As a summary for this bit, this emotional side, the emotional reaction to unfamiliar situations, to learning, to situations when your child is perhaps stressed and tired, is 3 simple rules. And that's what we're aiming for. Let's turn to the cognitive side, and then I'll summarise and give a chance for you to talk in tables and see if we can come back to questions. The cognitive side, about how children learn. There's one big thing that you can do to help your children learn. There's lots of things I could talk about, but this is the one I think is most important. It's the title slide. There it is. The biggest thing you can do to help your child learn is to get them into a very, very good sleep pattern. Now, you're all parents, you've probably been trying to do this since they were 2 months old, but it changes and it develops and it becomes more challenging as they go through teenage years. As children go through the teenage years, they become nocturnal, particularly boys, and there's evolutionary reasons for that. Evolutionary biologists have discovered that as boys go through the teenage years, and traditionally through all of the evolution of the human race, their role, for the majority of it, has been to go out hunting and go out hunting at night from their caves. They switch, their whole rhythm switches, so they become teenage boys who will stay up late. The girls don't. The girls stay typically in more routine sleep patterns. There are complete exceptions to that. course. But sleep is the biggest thing that helps, and I'll tell you why. And this is something that perhaps you can share with your children. I'm talking to some of the students this afternoon about this. We've always known that something special goes on when we sleep. But it's only been since around about 2008, which is very recently, that we've actually tied down the chemical reactions that go on in the brain connected with learning and sleep. We've always known things like early to bed, early to rise makes the BISB student healthy, wealthy and wise, old English saying. But 2008, there was some work done, and it was presented at the Academy of Neuroscience in Chicago, I think, in 2008, showing how the chemical changes in the brain actually improve learning. So you have to bear with me on this. This is a tiny little bit of neuroscience for beginners, me being the beginner. There's a chemical. It's called acetylcholine, and is involved in a thing called synaptic plasticity. Let's see if I can translate some of that. Yeah, no, I'm going to put that up after. I don't want people to read. I deliberately went back. Thank you. Yeah. Synaptic plasticity is the realization that the old knowledge about the brain, that it grew and developed through childhood and then through teenage years and adulthood, gradually neural pathways, neurons would die off and you'd be left with the ones that actually get you up and about and walking, is actually untrue. That throughout your adult life, your brain will grow and develop in particular ways. You can always teach old dogs new tricks. Now this acetylcholine is a chemical which is released into the brain, which not only creates this ability of the brain to develop and lay down new connections and new pathways, it's connected with something called long-term potentiation, LTP. Long-term potentiation is not just the ability of the brain to learn something new, it's the ability of the brain to create the potential to continue to learn something new. It increases your brain muscles effectively. So a muscle analogy would be that we could learn to create a better tennis stroke, perhaps, by practicing. And certain muscles would grow and develop to allow that to happen. But in addition, what you need is to develop your body so that it not only can learn one new tennis stroke, it can learn 10 new tennis strokes. Synaptic plasticity, long-term potentiation, triggered by acetylcholine, allows the brain to do this. However, this acetylcholine isn't around in your brain in great quantities all the time, particularly not during the day. It's actually suppressed. It's suppressed by serotonin and norepinephrine, stress chemicals, during the day most of the time. So these chemicals, these stress chemicals, actually get in the way of learning. But during sleep, they're controlled. During the sleeping state, serotonin and norepinephrine, the stress chemicals, go down, and acetylcholine kicks in. That is the time when learning takes place. Which is bad news for schools, because we always thought it took place in the classroom. It actually takes place when the kids are asleep. And it actually takes place during REM sleep, that stage of sleep where you get the rapid eye movement, where the dreaming state. And part of the reason for these chemicals to be suppressed is that if you're dreaming that you're being chased by a bear, and norepinephrine and serotonin are flooding your brain, then actually you won't stay asleep, you'll wake up and start running around. So it's got to be suppressed. And that's the time when learning takes place, sort of. So summarize that part. This is the first stage. There's 3 parts to this. So In a way, so far it seems that all you need to do is get a bit of sleep and you start learning things, or that you lay down memories during sleep. The things that you've taken in during the day are processed and are laid down as memories during the sleeping state, during REM sleep. Now, many of you will know that the dreaming part of sleep actually only kicks in partway through the night. Any of you are aware the activity trackers like the Jawbone Up and things like that, it will track your REM sleep, making sure you're getting enough of it. There's a problem though with this, is that this stuff called acetylcholine is not actually released into the brain until the last stages of REM sleep. You go in and out of this dreaming state during the latter third or so of your night's sleep. It's only during the latter third of that these two chemicals that the acetylcholine is released. What that means is that it's no good getting 6 hours sleep. For children of school age, 8 hours sleep is the absolute minimum, not just for health, but for learning. And typically 9 to 10 hours as they get older through all the way through, 9 to 10 hours. So, okay, you're expecting to hear me talk about homework. If homework gets in the way of sleep, it gets in the way of learning. Sleep's important. I'll talk a bit about how you can help with that in a moment. In effect, we must not only remember to sleep, we must sleep to remember. If we don't get the full night's sleep, and if children don't get the full night's sleep, any learning that they've potentially done during the day and during homework time is likely to be lost. There's a quote here. This is from it is the presentation to the Neuroscience conference in Washington, not Chicago, 2008. The absence of chemicals norepinephrine and serotonin serves a unique function for memory, giving REM sleep a singular role in learning. It is not replicable by more waking practice. What that means, if you don't get that late stage of REM sleep, you can't make up from it by just doing more practice of whatever skill it was or whatever homework it was later on. You lose it. One final point. I said there were 3 points. In practical terms, children don't always get that 9 hours sleep. There are times when they don't. Does it matter? Can they make up for it? The answer is yes, to a point. Because the lack of sleep not only stops that immediate learning, it stops that thing called long-term potentiation, LTP, which acetylcholine also helps with. It hinders the brain's capacity for more learning. So that sleep is not only crucial for the immediate learning from the day before. If it's missed, you progressively damage the brain's ability to learn. It can be made up for. It's not permanent. But it takes months to make up for several nights of lost sleep. So as a summary, there it is. Sustained lack of sleep impairs learning weeks after normal sleep habits resume. It takes a long time to get back. So basically, children can stay up late a few times. They can make up for it, but it will have a long-term effect. So, let's move on to some practical aspects and I'll give you a chance to discuss this. I believe this very strongly, that the best way that parents can help with homework and help with learning is to pay attention to the emotions associated with learning and pay attention to actually what is known about how sleep and learning interact. And if homework is about learning, we can work together to make homework more conducive to learning taking place. But it does involve attitude, emotion, and sleep being central to learning. The message is don't let homework, extra violin practice, and so on get in the way. So learning, emotion, and sleep are interconnected. So how can we actually help at home? This is going to be very simple. It's almost going to be obvious, I think, to many of you. Remember to sleep, sleep to remember. 9 hours sleep, routines matter. Any of you who've managed to get a 6-month-old into a routine sleep pattern, you've done well, congratulations. There are ways of doing it, but it continues throughout the upper primary through to the teenage years. Routines of bedtime and how it happens, particular times, having a bath, reading a story, all those things, they matter. I'm talking to parents here, I hope this is obvious to you. And no screens in the bedroom. There are studies which have shown that the effect of an iPad or a computer screen in the hour and a half to 2 hours before sleep damage that routine, that circadian rhythm of sleep and the REM sleep. And it's to do with the proximity of light, being close to your face, convincing your brain that it is actually daytime, and the strength of the interaction with the games or whatever it is they're playing on it. Television is actually okay. The light is more distant, and the interaction is not there. The television is not asking you to press buttons or to escape from a monster running across the screen or get the Tetris in the hole or whatever you're trying to do. So that activity, 1.5 to 2 hours before bed, jolts your brain into another rhythm which will damage those sleep patterns. So no screens in the bedroom should be a rule for everybody. The television's okay, so you can do a deal there. The emotional side. Stress and learning don't mix. Be positive. Be positive in your attitude to the learning. It's learning, it's not work necessarily, they're different things. Be interested. The granny cloud I might have to explain if you weren't here at Guy Clapson's talk. The level of interest that a parent can take has actually got to be quite minimal, but very positive. Sitting over somebody and checking their work as they're doing it and saying, actually, you missed out a comma there on that bit there. It's very counterproductive. Saying, gosh, that's interesting. You're doing really well there, has a very positive effect. It boosts the self-confidence in children. It increases that resilience and that independence. The granny cloud is something that was discovered by or invented by a guy called Sugatra Mitra, a professor at Newcastle University, who created things called self-organized learning environments. He found that if you gave children resources, and he used computers connected to the internet, and then left them alone, they would learn on their own incredibly effectively. The learning was enhanced if they had Skype contact, and he used grannies and grandfathers at a distance that these children didn't know, who simply checked in with them every now and again and said, what are you doing? That's really interesting. Gosh, you're doing really well with that. Oh, you're working really hard on that, well done. And that's all they did, and the learning went up through the roof. So the granny cloud is about the emotions, it's about the support, but it's not about picking holes in what the children are doing or over helping them. And this idea of the amygdala overload, the flooding of chemicals, the stress chemicals, it takes 20 minutes at least. So if children are getting stressed, give them time to work it through. The emotions matter. I've mentioned routines, but routines don't have to be fixed. Giving children a choice is a very positive, very effective way of managing things that need to be done. You can have your snack now and do this task afterwards, or you can do your task now and have the snack afterwards, for example. But within a time frame, both things have got to be done. Give a child a choice within that. They will make the choice themselves and will tackle both, having the snack and doing the homework in a much more positive way. Set up an environment, obviously, and set an example. Set an environment is about something called situated learning. Much as educators, much as teachers like to think that learning actually transfers from location to location, we find it actually doesn't. You can sit children in a desk, give them a particular routine or a particular amount of learning, then move them to another desk, they actually slip backwards. They forget how they did it on another table. Adults are the same. So if the homework is done in the same place at the same time, roughly each evening, that's far better than doing it at different places. And setting an example, the positivity, the doing something alongside them. It's homework time. Let's have a snack, do the homework while you're doing that. I want to do my own finances. I want to sort out my bills. And you do it, they see you doing the same sort of thing at a similar time. Well, if that's not possible at a different time, but as example, your attitude to some of the things which need to be done that night, are done positively. I tell my son, I love washing up. Oh, it's great, I've got to do the I want to do the washing up now. I have to be very careful. I've got to do the washing up. I want to do the washing up. He doesn't believe me. But it's about the language that you use on that. And how can it go wrong? And I'll finish with this slide and give you a chance to talk and ask some questions. These are things that have been shown to undermine effective parental involvement in homework. So in a way, less is more. Creating the environment and the emotional support is more important. I've talked for about 25 minutes now. People are meant to have about a 12-minute attention span before they need a break. So I will stop. I'll give you a chance on your tables. What I like to do, just for a few minutes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, is just share your experiences of your children and homework. And they'll be of different ages, they'll be of different attitudes. Some of them will be those teenagers that are becoming nocturnal and argumentative. Some of them will be 3-year-olds, I'm sure, who are still very keen to sit and listen to a story with you. And then we'll break, we'll have a few, I don't know how long we've got, Sophia. We'll have 10 minutes of questions after that if we need to. Okay. I'll give you 5 minutes just to talk on your tables and I'll take some questions.